Good afternoon, class, and good afternoon, all our online viewers. Thank you for tuning in once again to our ED's Economics for Development 2 seminar class. The topic before us today is a controversial one. Today we're going to be looking at whether or not colonialism bestowed any benefit on colonized countries. And as you're aware, I'm sure, this topic has dominated South African Twitter sphere and opposition politics for the last month or two. To discuss this today, or for the argument for the motion today, on Tatenda and Gift, they're going to be arguing for the position that yes, colonialism did bestow benefits on colonized countries, and against the motion are Nobalindi and Nomfanelo. But before we do, I want to wish you a very welcome and good day from sunny South Africa, from sunny Durban in South Africa. Thank you. Please, Tatenda.
A pleasant afternoon to you all and a warm welcome to our online viewers. My name is Tatenda Mgwendere, and me and my teammates will be arguing the affirmative on the topic colonialism conferred benefits on the countries that were colonized. Now, before I proceed, let me just clarify that we are not here to justify colonialism. That is a settled argument. We believe without a doubt that it was an unacceptable violation of people's rights that deserves to be condemned in the strongest manner possible. What we intend to explore, however, is whether intended or unintended, it conferred benefits that former colonies can build on in their quest for development. Now, although the aim was the same, the colonialists operated through one of these two systems. They either set up inclusive economic institutions or extractive economic institutions in the countries that they colonized. In North America, for example, because the indigenous people were sparsely populated, they could not be easily exploited for cheap labor. So the early British settlers needed to attract Europeans and incentivize them to work and invest. They achieved this by setting up inclusive economic institutions. An inclusive economic institution is an institution that allows and encourages participation by the populace in economic activities that make best use of their talents and skills. Its basic features include secure private property rights and provision of public services that provides a level playing field in which people can exchange and contract. These institutions foster economic activity, growth, and economic prosperity. Inclusive economic institutions form the basis of the success that we see today in former colonies such as Australia and North American countries. In Africa, however, the economic institutions set were largely extractory. That is, power, resources, incomes, and wealth were concentrated in the hands of the white minority, and the masses were left to suffer. Although it was extractory, several studies done by economists such as Daron Acemoglu and James Robinson point that there is a discernible pecking order amongst the colonizers concerning their impact on modern outcomes in former colonies. These two economists positively associated colonization by the Dutch, British, and French with modern GDP. Being colonized by a more economically advanced country brought exposure to technology and education. Looking at education, for example, Britain wanted to contain the costs of their colonies, so they enlisted the help of mission societies to provide education on their behalf. As a result, missionaries were influential in running schools, recruiting teachers, teaching religion, and adjusting teaching contents to local conditions. They even ensured that first grades of primary were conducted in the local vernacular, with English only being taught as a subject. After independence, most governments fully embraced the British education system, and by 2000, former British colonies had enrolled 70% of their school-age population in primary school. To a certain extent, I believe that the narrative that says colonialism never conferred a single benefit on former colonies, especially in Africa, is perpetuated by a coterie of elite individuals in positions of power bent on finding a scapegoat to cover their corrupt tendencies and mismanagement of the economy. I was not alive on the 18th of April in 1980 to witness the Zimbabwean flag being hoisted into the air to mark my country's independence. But I know for a fact that the new government, led by then Prime Minister Robert Mugabe, inherited an economy that had an annual GDP growth rate that was over 10%, inflation rate was 7%, life expectancy was at 59 years. What I was alive to experience, however, was the economic meltdown that reached its peak in the late 2000s. life expectancy dropped to 36 years. It was the lowest in the world. Official estimates, which were largely conservative, put the 2008 inflation figure at over 231 million %, the highest for any peacetime economy. One of the fundamental theses of the colonialists was that the natives could not govern themselves. It's unfortunate that a lot of African leaders have worked hard to validate this invalid thesis. Zimbabwe is just one of many sad stories where leaders sacrifice economic growth at the altar of power. These African leaders then use colonialism and neo-colonialism as their excuse for failing to ameliorate people's plight. Lastly, I believe also that another benefit of colonialism is that we survived it. Colonialism showed us that we are a strong and resourceful people capable of withstanding any harsh conditions. Far from proving our inferiority, it showed that we are a resilient people. We united, stood our ground, mobilized and fought back. Even though we had limited resources, training and support, we had a cause we believed in, and we managed to break the shackles of colonialism against all odds. Let's not betray the strength and tenacity showed by our forefathers by adopting this grievance-based approach and victim mentality. 4 former colonies, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, and South Korea, are already now a part of the developed world. It's time for us as a continent to show the world that we also deserve our seat at the table, and that we are not going to get it through charity, aid, or even compensation. We are a strong, resourceful, and innovative people, and if not for ourselves and our children, let's do it for the millions who shed their blood and died, fighting for the very freedom we enjoy today. Thank you.
Please don't pull it up. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. Okay, how can I tell a story we already know too well? Her name was Africa, his was France. He colonized her, exploited her, silenced her, and even decades after it was supposed to have ended, still acted with a high hand in resolving affairs in places like Cote d'Ivoire. A name that has been given because of her export products, not her own identity. Her name was Asia, his was Europe. Her name was silence, his was power. Her name was poverty, his was wealth. Her name was her, but what was hers? His name was his, but he presumed everything was his, including her. And he thought he could take her without asking and without consequences. It was a very old story through his outcomes, though its outcomes has been changing a little in recent decades. And this time around, the consequences are shaking a lot of foundations, all of which clearly needed shaking. Who would ever write a fable as obvious, as heavy-handed as the story we've been given? His name was privilege, but hers was possibility. His name was the same old story, but hers was a new one about the possibility of changing a story that remains unfinished, that includes all of us, that matters so much that we will watch but also make, and still tell in the weeks, months, years, decades to come. This is a quote by Rebecca Solnit, main explain things to her. Colonialism is the total control or governing of a nation over a dependent country or people. Colonialism is the condition of being colonial. The aim was to exploit the colony's economy and move them to their country, making the colony dependent on them. As a result, the colonized nations therefore lost their culture, their tradition, and their land, which was now owned by the colonizers, which led to economic dependency, as the colonized had to work for their colonizers to pay for the land they rightfully owned, but that was now owned by the colonizers. Is it even possible to think that colonialism awarded benefits to countries that were colonized? Is it fair to assume that the damage caused by colonialism was to benefit or in any way benefited countries that were colonized? If colonialism had any benefits, the nations that were previously colonized would also be as developed as their colonizers. But because colonialism was only to benefit one side, colonialism exploited, enslaved, stole, controlled the nations that were colonizing. How can forcing and imposing laws in nations that does not belong to you be thought of as having some sort of benefits as an end result? Colonialism is the tragedy of our history. The misery of the colonized, the torture that was experienced by our forefathers cannot have been of their benefit or ours to the least. Colonists tormented the colonies that they now think were benefiting in some way. Colonialism left a legacy that we all would rather reverse or undo instead of trying to look for benefits that do not exist. I will for a moment focus on Africa as a continent. Colonialism took Africa's land and resources. Africa is so poor even though it is rich materially. It is because of structural adjustment programs that are imposed on African nations by the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the United States Agency for International Development. These organizations loan money to African nations that they know very well that they will not be able to pay back with the high interest rate they charge, therefore enslaving the continent. Therefore, the world is divided into two, the growing gap between the developed nations and the developing nations. Colonialism existed before the Industrial Revolution, even though industrialization pushed the power-hungry colonizers as technological advances were made in manufacturing, more resources were thereafter needed. More products were made, and these products needed to be sold to someone. The economy then changed as they sold them to the same people that they were extracting the resources from. If colonization had any benefits, why are some nations still underdeveloped or not so developed as their colonizers? There were a number of colonizers, the British, Germans, French colonies, just to name a few. The European colonies went to Asia and many other parts of the world being motivated by God, power, and gold. They succeeded in brainwashing the unbelievers. They were powerful and they took all the gold they could let their hands touch, as they still do today. The colonized, on the other hand, benefited by getting diseases and death as returns. The British colonists from the 1700s to 1947 in India were harsh as the poor were forced to sell their land for food. The only developments I found in my research were of how the British built ports and developed transport networks in India. But were they really for India? No, not really. This development was only to extract raw materials from India to the colonies. And lastly, there was no benefits from colonialism. It only slowed down the process of development in most nations. We should all just accept this and stop trying to sugarcoat and accept the truth as is.
Good afternoon to the class and our online viewers. My name is Gift Wazu and I rise for the motion. Well, in Africa and other former colonies, colonization was mainly extractive. Extractive institutions, which the colonial power principles' intention was to extract resources without actually investing in the building of institutions. However, while extraction was ongoing, there were unintended benefits which spurred to developing countries. During extraction, colonial powers had to build structures and industries to extract these resources, such as gold, uranium, platinum, oil, diamonds, and so on. These structures still exist today, and they continue to operate and also play a fundamental role in the development of today's developing countries. When extraction and the building of industries was alive and functioning, colonialists needed to link these resources with international markets. This required infrastructure, such as roads, railways, bridges, harbors, reliable transportation systems, and institutions. This was a huge leap in development for most colonies because these facilities were largely non-existent prior to this. The development for most colonies because of these facilities, the development of such infrastructure put African goods on international markets, and these economies. The development for most colonies because of the development of such infrastructure put African goods on international markets, and the economies of Africa began expanding greatly due to the increase in the demands of their goods. With these new European markets emerging and demanding African goods, came the need to increase crop yields, and therefore new scientific methods of farming were introduced, such as fertilizers, pesticides, and insecticides. This gave rise to greater and better agricultural practices, an increase in crop production and consumption. Moreover, crops such as maize, which weren't part of many African societies and culture, was introduced, and even today it is still a staple food in most countries. The improvement of these structures also affected areas of health. The exposure of Europeans to diseases like malaria, yellow fever, malnutrition, and so on in their colonies prompted efforts to cure them, which not only benefited Africa but the entire world. Zia, who published an article in 2013, noted that mortality fell, populations increased, communication and peaceful contacts within Africa and with the outside world increased during colonization. This is true. We do believe that in pre-colonial times, Africans were traders, but the trading of these goods was somehow limited. We assume that Africans just tracked goods and carried them on their backs, and this form of system was somehow limited the expansion of their trade. Though, with colonial infrastructure, Africans were now able to expand their trade, carry goods in unlimited quantities. They could move freely, travel safely, communicate effectively and efficiently. This was indeed a benefit for African countries because the building of these structures was done at the expense of the colonizers. These structures were built to last, and as colonizers would assume, never dictated that there would once come a time where native citizens would rise and fight for independence. And due to the spillover effects of independence, this benefited developing countries because when they attained independence, this did not mean that they have to go back and start from scratch, building structures of communication and trade. Well, both extremes of the argument are somehow false. The assumption that Europeans insinuating Africans were savages or somehow inferior when they arrived in Africa, and Africans insinuating that they were flawless or had a perfect society before colonization. Certain immoral practices were ended as a result of colonization. Tribal wars, conflicts between clans, power was reshaped, gender inequality was reduced. Yes, we admit 100% colonization was evil, but can we say beyond reasonable doubt that intended or unintended, it did not confer any benefit to our society? Or is it that developing countries are just hiding behind the shadows and blaming colonization for their development failures? To close, I would like to leave you with a quote, with an interesting quote by Ilana, which reads, ultimately, what makes or breaks a society isn't its history, but human action is the ultimate adjudicator of human beings' worth. The aggregate action of many human beings acting together in concert makes or breaks a society. Thank you.
Good afternoon to our viewers and to my colleagues. My name is Dovali Dimashungulu and I'm against the motion. Okay, so the word colonialism cannot be used without invoking its highly politicized past. When one tries to understand the current economic, political, and social status of third world countries, one can never find the answers and reasons without investigating the impact of colonialism. Those who directly benefit from colonialism will tell you that it did not always have a negative connotation. European statesmen once proudly proclaimed that the imperial reach brought economic progress and civilization to countries that are considered as being not developed or backward. People who support colonialism and who believe that it conferred benefits to countries that were once colonized will argue that colonialism developed the independent judiciary system, transport infrastructure, piped water, and education. They will argue that the Europeans built railroads, and they introduced new feeds and fertilizers to improve farming. Although former colonial countries benefited from inventions such as railway, roads, and other infrastructures, the intention of colonialism was to benefit the Europeans. Whichever benefit Africans had, Europeans even benefited more. The main objectives of colonialism was to exploit the colonies and the inhabitants, to generate economic wealth for the mother country and her corporations. All the colonizers wanted to do was to drain the wealth, especially in mineral resource-rich countries, such as in the countries in the African continent. The impact of colonialism is evident in today's world, where we see large differences in economic status of developing and developed countries. The current economic status of third world countries is the direct implication of colonialism. On the African continent, many Africans were taken in as slaves to the New World and forced to work on the plantations without pay. The Europeans seized land from the African people to establish plantations for growing of cash crops. The African culture diluted, traditions were taken away, and the way of life was destroyed. Sorry about that. African traditional religion was also destroyed at the introduction of Christianity. People were forced to learn the languages of the colonizers. Families were torn apart due to the partitioning of Africa, which created new boundaries leading to present conflicts and slave trade. The Europeans took away most of the continent's resources, especially gold, diamonds, ivory, and agriculture. Africans were made to occupy only the inferior positions of the colonial administration and land. These actions never gave the African opportunities to learn how to use their own resources. Colonial countries imagined African countries as the space that will fuel their economies, creating wealth at the cost of colonized countries. Through the Berlin Treaty of 1885, the European colonizers divided Africa into Portuguese Africa, British, German, Italian, Spanish, French, and Belgian Africa, and there was no Africa left for Africans. The scramble for Africa by European countries was never for the social upliftment of any colonized country. We do not have to look at Africa alone, but we can also look at countries such as India. British rule in India caused transformation of India's economy into a colonial economy. The structure and the operations of the Indian economy were determined by the interests of the British economy. The colonial system drained the Indian economy by the virtual closing out Indian exports on the market. Though they built railways, they were not meant for the benefit of the Indian population, but to ensure that European products reached even the remote areas of India. Take a look at the construction of railway roads. The colonizers did not necessarily place the railroads by selecting locations of intrinsically high economic potential, but rather the cheapest and shortest route. The railways were constructed so as to enable the extraction of resources from the colonized country to the countries of the imperialists. Imperialist policies promoted ethnic rivalry by favoring one group over the other. Colonizers used the divide and rule, which resulted in ethnic conflicts that were still notably evident. Certain population groups were denied the political, economic, social, and human rights. Seeing that former colonized countries have been independent, the question arises, why resource-rich countries are still underdeveloped? In answering the question and understanding why third world countries continue to be underdeveloped, then we need to first look at how these countries continue to be incorporated into the global economic political system. And again, we need to look at a dynamic colonial history that has manifested into the post-colonial era, resulting in the reoccurrence of practices of the colonial system. Former colonized countries seem to be lagging behind, and the few that seem to be becoming established economies, there are great inequalities, especially when it comes to wealth distribution. Colonial legacies are very much visible, and that can be seen in the desire of the new government keeping the boundaries that were created during the colonial times. Much of the economic wealth is still in the hands of those that directly benefited from colonialism. In conclusion, colonialism laid the foundation for the current status of underdevelopment of former colonial powers. We may have inherited infrastructure, railways, and pipe water, but what good have they done for the social upliftment of the many impoverished people of these third world countries? Thank you.
Thank you, group. If you notice, we just went a bit over time, but I think given the breadth of the arguments put forward, I'm permitted that to go. So with permission of the House, I'll go up very quickly, and we're going to take three questions per round, right, as you usually do. And you can address it to either for our new members, to either both panelists, So a single panelist, make a comment or a question, and then they'll open it up. Okay, any questions, please? Yes, Gina.
I have a question for this side.
Speak up, please, you don't mind. Yeah.
I
Yes.
have a question for this side.
Oh, the side opposing the motion. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
the present. The first speaker said that colonialism slowed down development
Mm.
in the colonized countries. So I want to talk about, particularly in the case of Africa, what development was there? Because when you think of other countries, Asian countries, for example, they have maybe old temples and they have old writings. They had a sort of heritage that they had before the colonialists even entered their countries. But in the case of Africa, we have nothing. The oldest writings or anything we have inherited from the past is actually from the colonialists. Even our languages, we don't even have our own writings. We use the English, the Western alphabet. I don't know. So what development was there that they destroyed?
Yeah. That's true. We do use Latin and Arabic script on the content. That's I think what Gina was trying to say. Any other questions, please, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I think what I wanted to say, it will be like responding to what Gina said, but
Yeah.
okay. What colonialism has done to us is to make us think that whatever we're doing was backward and was not development. And when we think of development, it's in their context of what is development. So it has made us to assume that we were not developed. That's why when we talk of development, we think in their terms. What colonialism did first was to disturb the social dynamics. So they dismantled everything, and now they try to recollect in their own system. I would like a need to look at somebody who is a thief and organized a gang that kept on robbing the society. And this gang kept on growing. Now it's big. And this man now turns into a policeman. Now he's working as a policeman, enforcing security in your own society against a group that he formed.
Just to such a short there, Jeremiah, I'm actually going to get the opposing group, sorry, the group that's for the motion, to respond to that, right? Because I do think maybe you should sit up here with the side that's against the motion, with those sort of comments. Remember, it's for the group, right? Okay. Just one more question in this round, please. Please, Nanato.
Tatende mentioned that natives couldn't govern themselves. So I want to know, did you mean that the chief system wasn't working for the natives?
Okay. All right. So we're going to start. We'll start now very quickly then with the Nobalindi and Domfanello. And sorry, those who have questions, we will open it again for another another round of 3 questions. Please, so would you like to start, Nobalindi?
Yeah, in answering what you're trying to say, that we didn't have some heritage of some form, like for instance South Africa. Okay.
Okay, there's a part I missed. Like for them to find a way to colonize us, it means that maybe we didn't have any system in place, or our systems were not strong enough. If we were strong, then they wouldn't have. That was the point I was trying to make.
Okay, now so I'm a bit lost.
Sorry, if I may, it means in terms of our politics and government structures.
Yes,
Yeah.
they had to
So-
be a loophole somewhere, because if we
Yeah.
had such a strong heritage or systems in place, I don't think we would have been colonized.
You know, perhaps a bit of context as well is that, you know, the British and the Dutch were very efficient at using different tribes and ethnic groups against each other in Africa. So perhaps just maybe for our online viewers, just a clarification, you know, as well.
I think I did mention that what they did, they would favor ethnic groups over others. So what will the end it will create conflicts amongst ethnic groups, and that whole system of boundaries. Like for instance, this South Africa and Zimbabwe now that we have South Africa and Zimbabwe. Before those things did not exist, but once they started having those systems in place, they could actually separate people and create conflicts. would be an example of like the Zulus and Xhosas. You know, that is actually one. They're all from the Bantu, I think. But in the end, after colonialism, there was conflicts among those ethnic groups.
Are you happy with that answer, Gina? You're welcome to respond to it as well.
So something that you mentioned about development, meaning that in fact the first universities were found in Africa. In Timbuktu, was it Timbuktu or Mali? Yes, if you can. So you can't really say that we were not developed.
So before you start the Tatenda and Gift, do you want to reply to that? Those sentiments expressed?
It's Gift spoke about pre-colonial practices, and I think it's a bit tricky to assume that we were developed. And you talk about whatever universities and what, even the structures that we also had, some of them were exploitative. You talk about political structures. Look at King Shaka Zulu's reign. You look at slave. We think of slavery as if the whites were coming in and taking violently the natives, but then it actually was a trade. Look at Sierra Leone, that some monarchies were actually selling people to slavery for the exchange of things like guns. So some of those practices pre-colonial times they were also. So I think to assume that we were developed before they came and when they left we're now underdeveloped, I wouldn't agree to that. And then continuing to the comments that Mr. Jeremiah made, that what colonialism, it has made us backward people, or it has made us fit into their own mode or their own definition of development. I personally don't subscribe to that. I define development for myself. If pre-colonial times people ate once a day, and then because the white men said we need to eat twice or thrice a day, they haven't forced anything on me. It's still my decision to choose what I want my development to look like. And another thing that it breeds is this passivity to say, okay, we were wronged, we were actually mental slaves, so we are not going to break from those chains. What are we doing? Okay, if that's the case, that they have colonized us mentally, what are we then doing to break those mental chains? And I think Lerato, on your questions that the natives couldn't govern themselves, I think you didn't hear me properly. What I was actually saying was the reason why the colonialists governed us, their thinking or their thesis was that we couldn't govern ourselves. And I was actually trying to make the point that looking at the way things are now, it's as if our African leaders are actually validating that false assumption. When you look at the corruption and the lack of democracy that is still prevailing in African countries. That was the point that I was trying to make. I don't know if you
Yes, I also answered Jeremiah's question. And Jeremiah, we do understand that we are not saying that African countries or developing countries are backward or inferior. What we are saying is that we agree that colonialism was bad, but in the process of colonialism, there were benefits being spared to developing countries or Africa. And you mentioned an example that the thief uses a gun. So I'll also like to counter that. That's during the process of making a gun, there are benefits that are incurred to the process of making a gun, because not only will you use the gun, but you can also acquire skills that those are just some of the benefits.
Thank you for that, guys. I think we should maybe just make it clear as the side with the comments from Gift are made. None of the participants is endorsing colonialism. All of the participants agree that it was an evil and indefensible system. Am I correct to speak? Yeah, right? Yeah. I think we can say that on that platform. I think the arguments that are trying to put forward is, were there any benefits that were bestowed during this period of brutality in not only Africa's history, but Latin America's and most parts of Asia as well? Okay. Any other questions, please? So, we'll take 3. So it's Tandanani, and then it's going to be yes, Valentle. Anybody else? Our fact checker, Lena? No.
She doesn't have a comment.
Oh, okay. All right, and then our guests as well. Any questions? Okay. Yeah. A comment, please. Excellent. Please, Tandanani, go ahead.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, for the side against the motion,
Yes.
the lady said that there were no benefits and that we should stop sugarcoating the truth. So what I want to ask is, does she disregard the very tangible benefits which Tetenda spoke of? The technology which came about with colonialism, the science, the knowledge, which I would think we benefit from today. I mean, the space we sit in today, it was advanced, and a lot of it has to do with colonialism. So what I want to ask is, does she disregard the very tangible benefits which Tetenda spoke about when she says we are sugarcoating the truth and that there were no benefits? And
So please go ahead.
oh, okay. To the other side, the gentleman said that. Well, I said to be correct. Perhaps I did not hear him properly, but if I did, he said that gender inequality was reduced. I would like for him to expand on that. And then what I would also like to ask them is, we've established that they're not pro-colonialism, but they're saying that there were benefits which were bestowed on countries that were colonized. But what I would like to ask them, just their opinion. Do they think that the countries that were colonized would have benefited even more than what they did had they remained colonized for even longer?
Okay, well, I think we'll put it open to both to both sides. Okay, yeah, because that's in speculation. Please, you're welcome to speculation. And then we had, sorry, was it before we got to, yes, please.
Okay, I'll try and arrange my thoughts in a way that the team that is for the motion.
Yes.
Maybe this is just a comment about the question. My understanding of your argument is based on economic and leaps and bounds that have been made in technological advances. And I'm not discrediting that. It's very important. I also do believe much like Tandanani that I don't think we would be here today if it weren't for colonialism, because that era spurred on a whole lot of growth and da-da-da-da-da. So in my head, economic growth should usher in an improvement in the quality of people's lives. And I believe that can't only be measured in the terms of economics only. So what benefits are there? Because I feel like it's easier for us to pick a side if we look at this question from a macro scale. But let's scale it down to the individual. What has it done for the individual outside of, to sustain a living? What quality of life is it if they're still struggling? Yes, they receive a wage, but is it covering basic needs? So, yeah.
But I think that's a reflection on contemporary economic conditions. As our viewers know, South Africa has very high rates of poverty and inequality. So that's a backdrop to our questions. So it has been presented by Valentle. Can I say that? Can I say that? That it's also a reflection on current economic conditions.
Yes,
yeah. So not necessarily during colonial times, but nowadays. And then last year we said our comment. Please.
The other side mentioned something about breaking mental chain of colonialism.
Yes.
For me, I think it is quite difficult to do that because I feel like colonialism hasn't actually ended. It was just redesigned. Because we still see exploitation. That's why we spoke on the last seminar about introducing a minimum wage, because there is still exploitation which was evident during the colonialism time. So it hasn't much ended, and it's just redesigned. And even the system, the educational system, I think it's kind of programming our mind to believe that we can do without certain things that they introduced, basically. So
they being the colon. they being
So
the
I feel like
colonizers.
our minds are programmed already by the educational system as well, so it's kind of hard to break out from that state.
Just a note to our online viewers, you're only getting independent minds here whose mental chains are freed. Okay. So, thank you. Please, that's it. Our group here that's against the motion to answer.
Okay, to answer Tananani, I actually believe that we would have, in a way, developed in our own time, because we were trading during colonialism. Like, we were trading, like, you trade using cows or what you have, or crops or whatever that you had with other people. So I don't think that, I don't know another way of living besides colonialism. I don't know what, if colonialism didn't happen, I don't know whether, like, I know that we would have been different. I know that we would have developed and things like that, but I don't know how, because the only thing that happened was colonialism, but I know that our people wouldn't have.
They survived before.
Yes, they survived before.
Colonialism.
They ate. They weren't starving to death.
Look at it, Tananani, the way he's looking.
Tananani also had the speculation, like on, I think it was, had it continued. I think it was it. Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
And I think we open it to both groups. Yeah.
Yeah.
Had it continued. Yeah. Just a mental exercise.
Would we
For both
have
groups.
benefited even more
Yeah,
than what
yeah.
we spoke of today had
Yeah.
colonialism continued?
How would we have benefited?
Would we have benefited even more? That's why I directed it to that side with
Yeah.
outlining the benefits. So my question was, had it continued, would we have reaped even more benefits?
I don't think so, because ecologism was designed around extracting resources. They didn't really want to be part of this African society and really grow it. Because even if you, I mentioned railways. Like railways, the way they designed them was for them to get, if they wanted gold from this mine, you must get in the shortest and cheapest way to the ports. So it's not that we are going to benefit anything more than that. Besides, in fact, we are going to lose even more. Such as our mineral resources, like it was a Peru that doesn't have any, a Latin American country that doesn't have any more silver than they used to have before colonialism. That was extracted out of it.
I thought that perhaps the background to Tananani's question was the fact that countries such as Ghana and Botswana, who had the colonialists left much later, are actually experiencing some of the highest growth rates in Africa at the moment. I thought that was the provocative point that Tananani was trying to make. Whereas South Africa in 1910, we officially were not a colony anymore. So I thought that was the kind of provocative hypothesis.
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
that was it. And if I'm not mistaken, Maynard Keynes, if I'm not mistaken, he did say that perhaps the problem with Africa, for example, is not that it was colonized, but rather that it was not colonized enough. Because because as Dr. Boyce just said, if you look at those that were colonized for even longer, one could actually say that they had more benefits, hence their questioning. Yes.
Yeah, but before we do that, please to Satenda and Gift. There are many questions are directed to your side, so yeah.
I think it's Tandanani on would have benefited further. I would say our economy would have, definitely our economies would have benefited. I can't say that for the black men though, because of racial discrimination and prejudices, we probably wouldn't have benefited much, but our economies. But it's so funny that it's difficult for us, decades later after colonialism, we are still battling with this argument whether we would have made it or we wouldn't have. It's an indictment on the current leadership that we have, because what they had promised us, post-colonialism, we haven't realized those benefits. Hence, we're beginning now to make the comparisons. I actually think of what you said, because when my country got its independence, we had our own currency. Inflation, GDP was well above growth, was well above 10%. It's in the negative now. So clearly, I would say probably our economies would have benefited. And Nobalindi keeps on making a point that the structures were put in place in a way to extract resources. And I think Gifted already rebutted that, because it didn't happen. You can talk about that maybe in DRC, but in most countries, Zimbabwe, South Africa, the Europeans came here to settle. So when they were building some of these structures, they never envisaged that, you know, colonialism was going to end. So as a result, you know, those structures were actually strong. And so to then say they wanted to extract and take away everything, no, they actually, some of them consider themselves to be Africans. As a result, they don't want to leave because, you know, they came here with the mentality of settling down. And just to continue again, it's funny that now Focus, she spoke about Natia, about the mental chains, whatnot. And our Focus, look at countries like Ethiopia, Nepal, Afghanistan, they weren't colonized, but they are still backward today. And I feel like our conversation should move forward to countries like how's Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, countries that were colonized but are now developed. How are they doing it? You know, we spoke about education, and I think it's over. Science is science. 1 + 1 is 2. Whether it's taught by the black man, white man, whoever came up with it, 1 + 1 is equals to 2. It's only maybe history that we can argue, but science, maths, all those other important things we cannot argue.
Yes, you asked the question that how has colonialization reduced gender inequality? Well, some of the ways in which colonization has been trying, let's say it has addressed, but it's been trying to address this issue, is through the introduction of women in the workplace. You know, women have become less dependent on males, you know, because they earning an income, they are able to have greater purchasing power. So in that way, the inequality is reduced. And another way is through education. You know, education, even today, education empowers women. Tatenda mentioned that during 2002, former British colonies had enrolled almost 70% of school-age population in primary school, and this is inclusive of women. And from this statement, you can say these are some of the efforts that have been done to reduce the inequality. So I think, yeah.
Thank you for that, Gift. We've got time for just one more round of questions, right? Before we close up. Any last comments, questions? Before we vote on it, before we lose our online audience? Yeah, please. So Lerato, our guests, anything? Nomoetsu? Okay, and then we're going to close up, right? Okay. Please, Lerato.
My question is directed to both groups. I just want to know what's their views on post-colonial developments. Because if you look at, let's say, the cow train, for example, does everyone benefit from the cow train? It passes right past Alex through people's backyards, but have those people actually been on the cow train? How do they benefit from those kind of post-colonial developments?
Okay, both groups, and please.
Mine is just a comment.
Yes.
The settlers came, like, let's say in Africa, they didn't come to, like, for the sake of us, like in Africa, to settle. They came for their own interest, like whatever they wanted in Africa, and then they got whatever they wanted. But there are some things that you benefited from them, like the skills. There are some things that you are able to do now, but we don't know if they didn't came at that time. Maybe I shouldn't have disclosed by this time, maybe, you know. I'm saying it's good and bad, both sides. So okay. I think it's for now. It's how we go forward, like currently, like how are we going forward? It happened. It's how we go forward.
I think on that very conciliatory note, we have the side that's actually against the motion to respond to that. Right? How do we move forward? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And on post-colonial developments as well. So we'll start with the side that's for the motion to discuss post-colonial developments before Nobalindi and Nomoetsu and Nomfanelo discuss post-colonial developments and how do we move forward from here. Okay. Thank you. Please.
Yes, post-colonial development. Okay, we view post-colonial development. What we're trying to say is that let's ignore colonialism. Let's ignore the benefits, the sorrows of colonialism. And when I ended, I made a note that human action is the ultimate adjudicator for human beings, for human beings' work. So what I'm trying to say is, let us build a society where we can work in concert, working together to achieve development. Because what makes or breaks a society is human beings acting in concert. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add on to what Gift said, I think it's up to us to rewrite the narrative. This group, they continue, or even you mentioned that like the main agenda of the white people was to extract resources and what. But it's quite unfortunate that even the blacks, they are continuing with those same systems that were instituted by the whites. So when we got our independence, our expectations were, okay, our resources are going to be used, for the benefit of our own countries. I'll give you an example. Like in Zimbabwe, one of the largest diamond fields was discovered in 2008. But our country hasn't benefited whatsoever from that field. And our president actually admitted that more than $15 billion was lost as a result of the looting that took place at those fields. So it's entirely now up to us to say, okay, how then should we change our structures? We are at school now, let's come up with ways in our own spheres of influence. How then can we make our lives a bit better? Because we are the ones who are now in government. We are the ones who now have the power. So it's up to us basically to rewrite the narrative. Yeah.
So does that question address your question about inclusivity, if I can make?
No.
Okay. Sorry, and then please to close, Nofanelo and Nobalini.
You want to answer?
Yeah.
Did you ask the question?
Yeah, both.
Okay, yeah. What I can say is colonialism actually left people poor. Because that's my problem with colonialism. It left poor, and it left mostly the black families it left the black families being trapped in poverty. So we don't really benefit as black people. We don't really benefit that much on colonialism.
So yeah, I think the question was on post-colonial development.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think about the
As much as we're supposed to be on opposing sides, but I think I want to agree with him that we're not supposed to be looking at what happened in the history more, but we need to find a way forward as Africans. How are we going to try and fix the problems that we have instead of always falling back on, it's because of the systems that were enacted before?
I think that was the challenge set by Nomawetu. It's like, how do we move forward? How do we shift it? How do we move forward from here? Am I correct? Yeah. That was the question that was set to the group. Or perhaps you can continue this after.
Yeah.
Just was a comment, yeah, but just how do we move forward from there? If you guys want to take it, if the group doesn't think that it'll alter your votes in any way, we'd be happy to take it.
It's a very difficult question to answer because I think the more to say that. Oh, sorry, yes.
It was a comment, not a question.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so I don't have to, your thoughts on it, like pearls of wisdom, on how to do it.
So all of us.
All right. On that note, we're going to go to not only a vote, but to discussion of that, how do we take the narrative forward from here. For our online viewers, please don't hesitate to put over your comments, your questions on this session and all the other sessions that have gone previously. And before